everyone and welcome back to a brand new episode. Today we will be looking at Tameshi, and it's going to be a strange deck because Wizards decided to not actually print an official white-blue MECH general within the set itself. You can get one in the commander deck that they printed, but that's unfortunately not available. So I've had to make do with this Tameshi general to work with the white-blue cards to get that synergy I want with the mechs printed in the Dynasty. So let's have a look at Tameshi to see what they do. So it's a 3-mana 2/3. Whenever one or more non-creature permanents are returned to hand, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. So bear in mind this works for either side of the field. If you're bouncing one of your opponent's non-creature permanents to hand, you draw a card for that as well as your own. So it's very versatile. You've got X and Y ability, return a land you control to its owner's hand to return an artifact or enchantment with mana value X or less from your graveyard to your battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. So it's going to be a very powerful ability to reanimate something that your opponent's killed or you've managed to mill or put into there through other means. So it's very cool, versatile, and very different general. So they will be leading my mech deck into battle. So let's have a look at some of the mechs and vehicles that I've put into the deck. So let's take a look. Okay, so starting at the bottom, we've got ourselves a high-speed hoverbike, which is 2-mana 2/2, flash flying. When it enters the battlefield, you can tap up to one target creature, and it's good because you can tap down defenders, blockers on the opposing team, and you can swing in for that 2 damage, which could be relevant with a semi-aggressive deck like this. You have Mobilizer Mech, which is 2-mana 3/4, which is pretty good stats for a 2-mana vehicle. Whenever it becomes crewed, up to one other vehicle you control becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. So this becomes crewed, and then something else becomes crewed, basically. So that's a pretty good, like, domino effect. Oh, and bear in mind, if you're using vehicles, you definitely want to put SRAM in as well, because whenever you cast one of these, you're going to draw a card. We've got Peace Walker Colossus, which you've seen in a previous video. Dragonfly Suit, 3-mana 3/2 flying. 3-mana 3/4 when there's attacks. Return a creature or vehicle card with CMC 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. This is really cool as well. Mindlink Mech, which is nice because this can copy the kind of... let's read it, it's a bit weird. So, whenever it becomes crewed for the first time each turn, until end of turn, it becomes a copy of target non-legendary creature that crewed at this turn, except it's a 4/3, it's a vehicle artifact in addition to other types and has flying. So, if you've got something big and you crew this, then this becomes the same stats as that, which is quite unique. You can probably do a lot of stuff with this. But yeah, you'll have to see if we can get this into some gameplay. Prodigy's Prototype, 3-mana 3/4. Whenever one or more vehicles you control attack, create a 1/1 colourless pilot creature token with this creature cruise vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. So it's going to be a really powerful way to crew all your other vehicles. And yep, we've got the usual suspects like Sky Sovereign and the Weatherlight. And we've even included Ayo, the Dawn Sky. It's a really cool new dragon. Whenever it dies, you choose 2 abilities. Most likely we're going to use the top ability, which is look at the top 7. Put any number of non-land permanents with total CMC 4 or less from among them onto the battlefield. So it's like a collector company. If you feel like this ability is similar to something you've seen previously. And Mech Hangers is a nice bit of synergy as well. You can pay 3, tap it to make a vehicle become an artifact creature turn on turn. So don't forget how useful this is. If you don't have any creatures out, then this essentially acts as a creature land. Yeah, pretty unique, pretty cool. So to really trigger Tameshi's abilities, you want to have a few ways to return permanents to your hand, not just creatures, because you're not going to get any cards by returning creatures, unfortunately. But you've got stuff like Alchemist Revival, which can return a non-permanent to its hand, and if you pay 2, you could choose either player. So you've got to think outside the box, really. Stuff like this, you don't really want to include stuff that only bounces creatures, because then you're not going to be able to trigger Tameshi's ability. But yeah, if you like the look of the deck I'm going for here, don't forget to leave me a like. It really helps the channel. And why don't you sub? Really helps me out. And the deck list will be in the description below. And don't forget, after this, after all the games, there'll be a post-game review. And it'll be my breakdown of what I thought of the games I've had. And you might even gain some valuable insight into making the deck yourself. So let's get into the video. Okay, so we go first against Light Paws. Starting hand is not the best. I need some removal, to be honest, against their deck. This is kind of bad. We don't have the white mana, but I don't want to get a 6. So we're going to have to see if we can draw a white source. If we draw a white source, we're looking really good here. Okay, once again, We need a white source. If we're desperate, we could use Ghost Quarter on our own land, but let's hope it doesn't get to that point. Oh, Command Tower. Okay, that's fantastic. So now we can just Prison Realm the Light Paws. That was very, very lucky. And, yep, that's fine. I like another Plains on top. We've got a lot of white spells, so keep the lands coming for a while. Starnheim Courser makes our artifacts and enchantments cost 1 less, so you might want to get rid of that as well. So yeah, let's Banishing Light on this. Essentially, with this kind of Auras deck, you have to stop all of their creatures because Auras need creatures to be on the battlefield, right? That's the main deal. No creatures, no Auras. So they go for Light Paws again. It's good for us because we can just go Portable Hole. And although its casting cost is 4 now because of the tax, it's still CMC 2 Helvar. That's not what I wanted to see. 5 mana. So we can go for the Dovin's Acuity. Oh, this is cool. So we could... Interesting. So the Prism Realm has nothing underneath it because it hit a general. So this is a nice synergy here. We use the Avian Mechanic. We can use this to return the Prism Realm to our hand. But I want to do this in a turn when we have Tameshi out, because then we'll draw a card. So for now, we're going to pass the turn and try and get Helvar with the Aviary Mechanic. Oh no, the Swift Response, sorry. Okay, so we... As long as they don't have Vigilance, this could work. Okay. So what we don't want to see is Vigilance or a Protection spell. Swift Response. Does this get through here? And it does. Fantastic. So this is nice because now we can set up the turn for Tameshi and the Aviary Mechanic. So it's all about the little gains. So we could return the Acuity or the Prism Realm, but I think I want the Prism Realm back to my hand. Lovely. So yeah, we could even do... yeah, there's a few cards that have this ability, so hopefully we get a few more of those so we can keep redoing the Tameshi trigger. So here comes Light Paws with no enchantments. So interesting that they saw we have the Prism Realm in hand, so does this mean they have a protection spell perhaps? No idea. They did see that, right? They could have a protection spell. God's willing. Yeah, that works. Protection from white. So next turn we do have the Portable Hole. Ooh, Shepherd of the Flock. So this returns a permanent as well. Definitely leaving that on top. So this is a nice thing about our deck. We can just... we've got a lot of surprises in store for them. So we just have to be patient. We can do a block trick. So if they make this huge, we can block it with something and then bounce it back with Nyambi. Bounding Gold. But however, I do want to save my general. So let's go for Nyambi. Nyambi will return Tameshi to hand and save it. So yeah, there's a lot of cool little synergies you can find yourself. Make sure to return it to hand or that will be regretful. So yeah, annoyingly Tameshi doesn't see that trigger happen because it's the one being bounced. But yeah, sometimes you can get a nice tech win like that and it feels good because you're not winning just through raw power, you're winning through combining different abilities together in a unique way. Okay, so we're going up against Tatsunari, so they're going to be a Sultai enchantment build. Starting hand is fairly decent. We've got the temple to hopefully scry into another land. And a fairly aggressive curve. Portable Hole would be nice, but I really want to hit another land drop here. Shaper's Sanctuary turn 1, that's pretty devastating. Let's go for Gates of Isfelsia. Whenever we target one of the creatures with a spell or ability, they draw a card now. Pretty annoying. Search for his counter. Okay. So maybe go for the... Let's go for the mech first. And then in the following turn... What can we do? Unfortunately, we don't have enough power to crew the mech yet. It does need 3. And our general only has 2 power, rather annoyingly. I wish it was a 3-2 rather than a 2-3. So somewhat annoyingly, they've got 3 of the strongest enchantments you could ever imagine. And so if I do go for the Kitsune Ace, I couldn't pilot the mech anyway, so we might as well just go for the Bomat Bizarre Barge, draw a card. So both of these are crew 3, which is quite sad. So although Tameshi is a mech general for this current deck, unfortunately they're not quite strong enough to pilot these. Rather embarrassingly, you could say. They're going to have 3 mana up. So let's see if they have a way to interact with Tameshi here. And then we can even go for the Kitsune Ace as well. And let's try and crew the bigger one here. Although saying that, that was probably a mistake, because I probably should have crewed the Mobilizer mech, because when this becomes crewed, another vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end turn. Okay, so that was unfortunate there. This is the thing about playing new cards, not always privy to exactly what they do, so that may have cost the game. The extra 3 damage, we shall see. If they use a board wipe, will be quite annoying, because obviously we've got our utility creatures here. Curious as to what they have. They keep looking at our creatures, so I mean, the way they're looking at all of our permanents. Okay, binding goes for Tameshi. Sure thing. So I guess we could just recast it. Okay, so this time I'm going to do it properly. Crew both of these. So this is what should have happened previously. So giving a vehicle first strike could be pretty good if they had blockers, but doesn't look like it's going to matter unless they have any. Curious as to when they might start casting the Tatsu Nari here. Also, scarily, they discarded these Skeletal Swarming, so maybe they're looking for the 6th land for something like Casualties of War, which would be pretty bad. Revenge of Ravens, okay, that's going to gain them quite a bit of life. But what could we do here? We could go for Elspeth Conquers Death, just to stop them gaining that life, because we are an aggro-y deck after all. So we want to stop as much of that as possible. And yeah, now we're going to see the power of the Immobilizer mech. Double crew is pretty awesome. So they are at 5. So let's think of some maths here. They're going to go up to 6 in their turn. They need to... Well, I guess they really need to kill our creatures here. Otherwise we're going to go to crew. Tatsunari comes down. And a Druid class. So they're going to get a 3-3. Going to 7. Kai's Ghost Form, draining us to go into 8. Okay. So can we deal enough damage this turn? Let's go for the glass casket. So annoyingly, the Tatsunari will still come back even if you exile it. So maybe we'll go for the Kaimi. They will draw a card, which is fine. Let's see if we can sequence this. Annoyingly, the land this gets goes into the battlefield tapped. But it shouldn't matter, because the high-speed hoverbike comes in, taps one of their guys, they will draw a card. And now we can crew. And this should be Xaxes. So luckily missing that extra damage early on didn't matter too much. Because it paid off. Sweet, moving on to the next game then. Okay, so opponent goes first with Adeliz, the Cinderwind. So they're going to be an Izzet Wizard aggro build. Very powerful general for an uncommon. Whenever they cast an instant or sorcery, wizards they control get +1/+1. So definitely one to not underestimate. Our starting hand is decent. We've got a few pieces of interaction. We've got a nice blocker in Faithbound Judge. So there's one thing about vehicles actually. Vehicles kind of have been making defenders a lot better these days. So obviously there's a lot more utility to Faithbound Judge than just being a defender. When it flips, you can enchant your opponent with this enchantment, and basically in 3 turns they lose the game, which is quite cheeky, but... So we've got a number of options here. We could flash the hoverbike in their turn to tap down a blocker, so I think I'm going to do that. Oh, sorry, tap down an attacker. There's a lot of utility here, so let's do this now. So they've definitely made vehicles a lot more versatile these days. Taking one. So will they play Adeliz? We Dragonauts. Okay. So this is a good window for us to go for the Faithbound Judge. And eventually we might even be able to surprise them with Suit Up, which makes a creature or vehicle a 4/5 until end of turn. So it's a nice little surprise blocker in case they choose to come in with their bigger things. Glacial Grasp, so that's going to tap my defender and they will also draw a card, but what we can do is we can still use it to crew the high-speed hoverbike. So they also mill us for 2 and they hit a couple of things there which could have been relevant. And yeah, I don't think we want to block here, it's not a great trade for us. So hopefully we can... I mean, a board wipe would be really great because it doesn't really affect us too much. We can't block with the Faithbound Judge next turn either. We've got a Frostbite, so that's going to be able to kill one of our creatures. So maybe... yeah, this is going to be bad because they can go Adeliz and they can play the Frostbite as well. Yeah, having this tapped is not ideal, to be honest. I guess we could go for the Solemn Simulacrum. Best way to optimise our mana, isn't it? And then the following turn, Faithbound Judge will be able to defend. So we're just going to have to take a few hits for now. Yeah, if they come in with Adeliz here, that's going to be quite a lot. So the buff that they give the whole team is quite scary. Obviously, if they choose to kill the Solemn, then we can crew the high-speed hoverbike. Okay, so they're basically trying to bait us to block with the vehicle, but there's no need. We're not going to survive this trade. trade-off of cards, but we will absorb 4 damage here. Lightning strike to the face. Okay, that's very aggressive. I guess they're still dealing 7, 8, 9 damage to us. So we definitely need a board wipe here. AO is a good card. Will that really help? Maybe we should go for the Circuit Mender just so we can gain some life. Or maybe this. So they've got 3, 4, 5. We've got 5, so we won't get any mana off of this. Yeah, I think we'll go for the Circuit Mender. So it gains its life. It can activate the hover bike, and then also maybe we need a blocker on the ground as well. So let's play the Loyal Warhound. So we're definitely giving them something to think about here. It's not going to be, well, unless they have something like Embercleave, which could just crush us very, very quickly. That's what I was saying before about Adeliz being an uncommon general, but rarity is very misleading. Bouncing the Faith Bounder to my hand. So I guess we can crew there. So it's a shame we didn't have Tameshi out, because we would have drawn a card for that as well. Damn, so they can still use the Frostbite. So yeah, this is pretty much lethal, I think. Yeah, you can see how silly this kind of deck is, but yeah. We didn't get any removal whatsoever, did we? Nothing we can really do. Yeah, because the aerial stuff is just too much as well. Yeah, they got very lucky. Again, we got no removal, so not much we could have done there. Moving on to the next game then. Okay, so opponent goes first with Izoni Thousand Eyed. They're going to be a Graveyard Synergy Golgari build. And if you've not seen Izoni, when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token for each creature in your graveyard. And they can pay black and green to sack another creature to gain 1 and draw a card. Really powerful ability, especially if you've milled like half your deck. Our starting hands, it's a bit weird. It's 3 removal spells, but I guess I should probably keep it. Go with the Temple. Don't want any more removal just yet. So at least we've got a mech we can use soon. Blood Artist, so I definitely want to get rid of that one. So let's put it in the Circle of Confinement. Do they have a way to destroy the circle? Perhaps. But for now, let's go for the Dragonfly suit. So one thing I love about mechs is, well, not only the design, but the fact they're quite evasive. So obviously if the opponent had an instant there, they couldn't have used it to kill the Dragonfly suit. Unless, of course, it was a destroy artifact or enchantment. And yeah, so let's crew the Dragonfly suit now. And try and get into 3 damage. So at this point the opponent might be torn into killing one of them if they had a removal spell, but it looks like maybe they don't have the right mana, because they did miss a land drop. Leyline Prowler does give them the land they need. But I think, unfortunately, we're going to go and kill it with the Sky Sovereign, which is very powerful. And the cool thing is that the defender can crew the Sky Sovereign. So I'm not sure of the flavour there, but I guess Pilot doesn't need to consider himself attacking, because he's behind the wheel of the ship. So the Dragonfly suit is definitely doing some work here. Shadow Spear, so it looks like they're really screwed for mana. Okay, so I suppose we could... If we want to attack with both, we could go for Tameshi. And even if they kill Tameshi, we can still crew the Dragonfly suit and swing in for quite a bit. So let's crew the Sky Sovereign with the Judge. Yeah, that's one nice thing about crewing is it doesn't matter if the creature came in this turn, you can still do that. Just make sure you tap the right things. I've done it before where I've accidentally crewed a vehicle using another vehicle, so just be careful when you're clicking stuff. It's not quite as intuitive as real life in paper. And I suppose we could do some trickery with the core Skyfisher. So this is nice. It comes in, return a permanent to your hand. So we could get this in and return the circle to hand, but I'm not too bothered about that yet. For now, let's just foretell the Raven form. And then the following turn, we can exile one of the creatures for 1 blue, which could be useful. They are sort of nearing lethal. Ooh, here comes the Chupacabra, so they're going to kill the Quakeman Judge. So it looks like they might have some kind of ETB style deck. So what should we do? Shadow Spear is going to be irritating if they have the life. Okay, tell you what I'll do. I could go for this. So it's Spearland. Oh, this is tricky, isn't it? Return a permanent to your hand. So we go for the Bomat Bazaar Barge. So this comes in, I draw a card. Then we go for the Skyfisher. Comes in, return the Bomat Bazaar Barge. We draw a card because of Tameshi. That's lovely synergy. And then we can crew the Sky Sovereign with 2 guys. Swing in, and then we can also kill the Sky Sovereign on attack. It's pretty good. I don't want them to be able to flicker that, you see. And they are going to die in their next turn unless they have a way to get rid of the Sky Sovereign. Well, they can either get rid of the Sky Sovereign or both of our creatures, I guess. But yeah, don't underestimate a downside like Core Skyfisher. It looks bad, but returning a permanent to your hand is actually beneficial a lot of the time. If your general is enchanted with an enchantment that says it doesn't have any abilities, like imagine returning that to your hand. Why did they... They used Vraska's Contempt. Wait. So they used 2 removal spells that they could have used on both of my vehicles. That's kind of weird, right? Kind of weird. Sure. So let's go for Meandering River. Yeah, because... I'm really confused now. Sure. So let's go for the Bomat Bazaar Barge. Sorry, sometimes opponents do such weird things that it just throws me off. So this comes in, we're going to do the same trick again. So this is why these abilities are so useful. Return the Bomat Bazaar Barge, draw another card. And then we win by crewing the Sky Sovereign. You see, if the opponent had waited till we crewed it, they could have just killed it now. And they wouldn't... Although, to be fair, they do gain 1 from this. But you get the picture. They could have saved 6 damage there. Too hasty with the Vraska's Contempt. So Claw Headwind comes in with no targets. It normally does damage to a flyer. So 7/3 Trample Lifelink Reach. That's interesting. Because Sky Sovereign doesn't actually deal damage in combat to this. Just to make sure. Let's just exile. Sorry, let's just destroy the artifact. I don't want that to be gaining them any life at all. Okay, so it seems the opponent has hit Sultai mode, where they choose to... Okay, fine. So, yeah, so we could have crewed the Sky Sovereign and swung in. Hello and welcome back to the post-game review. So here we will just take a look at some of the cards and some of my thoughts of the deck to see how we could potentially take it going forward. So as I said at the beginning of the video, Tameshi is a strange inclusion in the set because it was the blue-white slot in the set. So Wizards decided to not make it an actual mech itself or a pilot, which is a bit unusual considering that the Commander set has that going for it outside of the regular set that we're not going to see on Historic Brawl or Arena for now, so that is a shame. So the inclusion of Tameshi is kind of like a proxy for me at the moment. Firstly, flavorfully, I get that Tameshi is part of the story because Tameshi deals with the reality chip and Kaito, but yeah, it's not really synonymous with mechs, and also having 2 power is very low and therefore not a very good way to successfully crew vehicles and mechs, unlike my Dorothea video in the past, which had 4 power, which was a humongous difference because, as you can see, a lot of the big things are crew 3. So having Tameshi out is very challenging. It's almost like playing hard mode. In my testing, I didn't see a single other Tameshi deck, which I guess is kind of cool. And that's kind of what I want to go for. I want to use stuff that either no one's seen or use things in a different way. So if you've watched this far, thank you very much because you're contributing to my channel's success. I understand that these kind of decks might not be as exciting as your Jingataxius decks, but yeah, sometimes you see something new and you give it a chance, and yeah, appreciate that. Thank you very much. So yeah, as I said before, Tameshi is not so great at crewing, unfortunately. So our success rate was still decent considering this, but we had to be using a lot of other support cards to crew. The deck doesn't have too many creatures. Some of the pilots, like the Kitsune Ace, pretty decent for crewing and then untapping it so you could then use it to crew yet another vehicle. The Loyal Warhound's pretty decent crew because it's a 3 power creature for 2 mana, which is really nice. And yeah, I guess it's a tough balance vehicles. You'll find that vehicles in any format is hard to make because you're balancing creatures and vehicles. And what ratio do you go for? Do you go 50-50? Do you go for more creatures than vehicles? It's not entirely... there's not an exact science to it. You just have to basically keep playing until you get the right ratio that you like. One thing that I really did enjoy was the synergy of whenever opponents would target my things, I could bounce them back to my hand using stuff like Alchemist's Retrieval, or Nyambi's pretty good because you also gain life. But I don't know if you remember in my video, if you do bounce Tameshi back, unfortunately it doesn't see that ability happen because it's not on the field. So it really wants to, you really want to be bouncing the other things on your field. And we also had the nice synergy with the Prism Realm and stuff like that. So if you exile your opponent's generals with effects like Prism Realm, the enchantment still remains on the battlefield, and then you can reuse it again. So the deck, some of the star cards in the deck, stuff like Core Skyfisher, returning stuff to your hand, Shepherd of the Flock, anything like this, every mechanic to apply some pressure, return something to your hand. It's quite a unique and refreshing gameplay style that I've not actually seen anyone do, because obviously Flicker until this deck has kind of been the king of bounce, right? Because you return it to exile, from exile. Sorry, let me rephrase that. So Flicker is you exile a permanent you have, and then it comes back to the battlefield either immediately or at the end of the turn, and then you're reaping the rewards of that card re-entering immediately. But with Tameshi, Wizards have cleverly worded the ability to make it a bit of more of a slow burn. But in doing so, it has created kind of like a new archetype as such. It's not Flicker, and it's not quite the bounce you think of, because normally when you say bounce, you think of returning creatures to opponent's hands, which obviously you can do in the deck, but you have to look at the wording very carefully and pick stuff up. Like Aether Tradewind is nice because it says permanent. Obviously, you want to return a permanent, a non-creature permanent to your hand in order to proc the Tameshi trigger, but in doing so, this also bounces something else to their hand as well. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword, but sometimes you can use it to your advantage. A nice little card I think I found is Dove Insecurity, which does take the deck into a somewhat different direction. You could make Tameshi with instants and sorceries, have loads of those instead. But yeah, as I said, I've had to make the vehicle mech deck, not only because I just love mechs, love vehicles, robots, anything like that. But yeah, I thought it was kind of a missed opportunity from Wizards to not actually have a proper one. So I hope you guys don't mind what I've done here. Going forward, what I'd like to see, I guess it depends what kind of deck you want to build. If you wanted to make this like really a lot more powerful than the one I've built, it's totally possible, but you will, you need to think really hard about the enchantments and artifacts you're including in your deck in order to proc the ability. Speaking of which, I barely used the X ability. The one time I did that I remembered was getting the Solemn Simulacrum back from the graveyard, which was really useful. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can build this deck, so I hope you guys have fun exploring. But yeah, tell me below if I've missed something and you see some other cool synergies that may have worked in the deck. But yeah, that's all I can really say for now, not terribly in depth. But yeah, if you like what you see, don't forget to drop me a like and a sub. And you might see more mechanically unique decks coming from me in the future. Tell me below if you like seeing the usual tier 1 stuff that everyone else has done, or you prefer more of the mixed bag that I try to provide. Until next time, see you later guys. If you enjoyed watching this video, why not try some of my other videos on my channel? And don't forget to support me by hitting the like and subscribe button for more content like this.